The episode you're about to hear is authorised by me, Kate Hulett, at 106 High Street Mall, Fremantle.
The people who walk away scot-free with the profits are the developers, and the people who suffer are the construction, the family-run builders, often locally owned building companies, and the people who are holding the mortgages with nowhere to live.
Yep. Follow the money and, follow the Peter Dutton having dinner with the head of the biggest, developer in the state, stuff like that. And you think, that's interesting. I wonder if that's why this is not being fixed.
Hello.
Welcome to
A Piece of Kate
with Kate Hulett and
Emma Pegram.
Pegram,
Emma. Pegram, comma Emma. We're recording on Tuesday afternoon from Treeby.
This is really a podcast to watch because the scene we are finding ourselves in, we're sitting on milk crates.
It's technically someone's driveway, I suppose,
We're on
in the long term.
yellow sand. There is a chain link fence behind us and a bit of a skippy thing. Anyway, you should watch it because we can't believe it either. I've been transported back to my childhood when we used to just play in these sorts of buildings for hours and as they were being built. Anyway.
It's a great setting.
Welcome to Treeby. Can I just say, I've been in Treeby every day for the last 7 days.
Weren't we talking about it the other day on the pod that we were going to buy
all
a share house in Treeby?
Because Treeby is all I can talk about.
We've moved here, basically.
I was like, we were driving here, I was like, Emma, take a left here. No, not there. That part, where the school is.
You know
where the good
is.
toilets are. That's the Zambarera, and then the IGA is next door. Anyway, here we are.
Nice hood.
Yeah. Can I also just say, we're near Jandakot Airport, so you will hear lots of aeroplane sounds.
A lot of planes, which has been a recurring feature of the last 3 days, which is great. So things that happened today, a couple of...
polling opened. Early voting.
Serving polling 2 ways this morning. Yeah, pre-polling opened. And there was some things in the news about polling being done.
Wait on. I've been out of the office all day and Emma and I haven't really caught up. Did you say one of the polling booths ran out of ballots? Or is this just a conspiracy?
Unconfirmed rumours. I'm not really willing to... I don't know. Yes, there was some talk about that. The polling booth captain went down there and sounded like, actually, I do know what came of it. They had run out of ballot papers, but then they learned, after having already crossed someone off the list and telling them they couldn't vote...
No, not again.
They learned that they could actually print ballot papers at the location. As in that the AEC person learned. So at least they've learned, but then they apparently told the person, it's just too late, I've already crossed you off. I don't even know what that means. If you've crossed them off, can't they go and vote? Anyway, whatever.
And that was in...
We don't need to prosecute
one
this
of
case
the,
right here. But...
Someone else prosecuted, but... Well. Okay, that's cool.
Yeah.
Not reassuring.
Indeed, yeah. So it sounded like pre-poll was quite busy at all locations. So we had people out at, all 4 of the ones that are in or near Fremantle, the Fremantle division, and they all sounded quite busy. So that's fun.
Yeah.
At one point, someone told me at 10:30 they were leaving, and there was an hour and 15-minute wait to cast a early vote.
Kooky looky.
It is a bit.
We're back on the kooky looky scale.
We'll see what happens tomorrow. Maybe just because day one,
maybe because they didn't realise
people got time. They're trying to, I don't know.
They had to print out the ballots. I don't know. They're like, wait. There's a list somewhere. I've got to find the list.
Yeah.
Okay. Anyway, it opens every day except Anzac Day and Sunday until voting,
Election day.
Election day.
Next Saturday.
That's what it's got a title.
Voting day, polling day. Yes, correct. And then the other thing that happened today...
Well, I came to office to pick you up and you were like... bloody hell. And I was like, what?
This is real footage. Responding to reading the West Australian.
And I was like, what? And you go, bloody, come on, the West, bloody hell. So can you tell me, because I haven't read
the story, but yeah. Well, so, okay. There was some polling being done by Climate 200 in the division of Fremantle.
Can you just quickly describe what polling is?
What polling is? I mean, I'm not a polling expert, but basically they call people up and ask them questions and it helps them understand, you know, like if people know about you, how people intend to vote. But then they also use it sometimes to do message testing.
But just on that, I mean, there's polling about everything. Like, do you prefer Wheat Bix or cornflakes?
I mean, I don't know who's doing that polling, but you can.
Well, I know, sanitarium. But
there's polling going on all the time on various topics for various candidates as well.
And
all sort of
the message testing is like, do you prefer hearing, does this sort of sentence persuade you, or does this sort of sentence persuade you? And that, again, is done on all manner of things, vehicles, housing, advertising. Like,
it's a marketing thing.
And it's, of course, when there's an election on, there's polling happening across the country in all sorts of manner of ways, and it's quite an expensive thing, which is why we haven't been able to do any, because it would be very useful.
Well, so the article that was in the West was, you know, talking about this polling. Obviously, people get polled, so then there's an awareness that it's happening, and there's a bit of a heightened awareness about it at election time, but. The basic way that it's done is they ask about voter intention. So they ask, you know, who are you going to vote for out of the candidates? The person responds. There might be other questions about demographics, etc. And then the message testing comes, and the message testing might be something like, Kate Hulett cares about X, Y, Z. Now that you know this, how would you vote? And they list all the candidates again. But basically, if you were to ever use the polling,
someone's just landing on the street run. So
if you were to ever use the polling to say, I don't know, promote that your candidate is going to be successful in an election or has a better chance of winning, you would be using the first statistic, which is where people say how they're intending to vote in that moment. You wouldn't be using the number that you get after you've tested the message, because obviously that's not how they would have voted at the outset. So anyway, the article was sort of calling out this style of polling.
Polling is just like odds,
angry about
you know, like it changes all the time, and it changes over a period, and it's just polling. But it referred to us because the polling was asking about our campaign.
Correct. And there might be a perception from some people that you've commissioned that polling or whatever, which you hadn't. And in fact, we only found out about this because one of our volunteers got polled. And then we, asked Climate 200 if they were polling, and they confirmed it, and they confirmed it to the West as well. But what I was annoyed about in the story was that this kind of willful misinterpretation or mischaracterisation of what the polling is trying to, achieve and what they're going to use the polling for. Like,
What were they implying?
Well, they're implying that they're trying to skew the results of the poll to create a successful narrative around you, rather than just using it, strategically to inform how a campaign might message or how Climate 200 might go about its own messaging, which is really what they're doing. But it's a common thing that, the media does.
Just
to make people look bad.
I was going to say, where I'm from, got the shit talking.
Well, yeah.
That's what they're doing.
Yeah.
I mean, that's a paper, isn't it?
It's frustrating because I don't think... Well, I think the journalist is probably smart enough to know that that's not actually what's happening, but that's still the narrative
Got to
they
make
choose
a story.
Yeah.
It's a cooler story, yeah.
Yeah. Anyway, if you did get polled, it wasn't us, and there's nothing suspicious or untoward going on, so just FYI.
And the reason that I wasn't there getting furious with you about stuff like that, IRL, was that I was...
Patting animals.
Well, basically. I was patting animals.
You had a big morning of animals and wildlife. Yeah. Tell me more.
Well, we live in a biodiversity hotspot. Don't know if anyone had told you. And Australia is the leading country of extinctions and, anything bad, we're at the top of the leaderboard. So I earlier today met with a representative from the Wilderness Society who is asking candidates to kind of pledge to, protecting wildlife and biodiversity and stuff like that, which, of course, I was like, yes, where do I sign?
We're one of the biggest culprits for deforestation, and we're actually ranked number 1 world leader in mammal extinctions. Pretty shocking. We just want to really amplify the message of protecting nature around this current election, and hopefully get candidates like yourself speaking out a bit more for protecting all our special places that we all love.
Of course, at the last election, Labor government promised to put in the nature positive laws, which then got squashed,
Yes.
quashed,
Twice. I
double
think.
squash. And now, for this election, they're saying again that they will put in nature positive laws,
Yeah.
but this time for real.
Yeah, essentially, they are being quite vague around what that actually means and how these are different from the last ones that they didn't go ahead with. So yeah, we really, I guess we want to keep the pressure on them and make sure that what they are trying to pass, passes the pub test, is actually going to protect nature. It's actually going to make a difference for our vulnerable creatures and all the places that we know and enjoy, like the Bibra Lake here.
Because WA is one of the very few biodiversity hotspots in the world, right? And we therefore should really be cherishing and protecting and looking after it, like
Yeah, definitely.
priority number one, maybe.
Yeah, we have so many like unique species that aren't found anywhere else on Earth. Like like critically endangered, like black cockatoos, like with 3 unique species here that are facing extinction right now, which is quite shocking. Which is also why we have we're actually taking the environment minister to court at the moment, trying to we believe that she hasn't been really doing her job, outlining how that her and her government are planning to kind of save these species from the threat of extinction. So we're trying to hold them to account and make sure that they actually are trying to put things back on track and have a way that we can recover.
It strikes me always as strange that even if it were for pride and ego, that the politicians wouldn't be like, I saved this species from extinction, or I increased the tree canopy in Western Australia by this much, or I did this thing that was positive. And I can't understand that even for their own egos, they're not kind of doing that stuff.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
We met down at Bibra Lake, and the lake is but a pond, and that is an effect of climate change.
I'm sorry, I literally heard that as a pond of butter. Not but a pond. Anyway, go on.
Okay, cut that bit. Emma's losing her mind. It's happened.
We're done.
And, so there's less turtles, there's less birds, because there's less space for the turtles to live, the foxes can get them, and it's just this knock-on effect of bad. So that was first step. Then we went around to the WA Wildlife Centre, which...
It's in Bibra Lake as well.
Yeah, on the edge of Bibra Lake. Now, I'm just turning my pages so I can
many
get
notes.
I classically. 6,500 animals a year they deal with. And every day they deal with 30 to 80 animals being delivered.
So many.
30 to 80 animals. And a regular vet might have 4.
And isn't it mostly volunteer run there?
Mostly volunteer. It's a not-for-profit, and they literally run off the smell of a greasy rag. It's so big. So first we went in the main building, and there's like the X-ray room, the triage room, the surgery room. Then there's like where they keep them in their little, the reptile room is cold, and there's a mammal room, warm. Then there's ponds and the da-da-da-da. And then you go out the back, and there's more, like there's a pelican that's trying to get its waterproofing back because it's had to get clean because it was in an oil spill, and it just lives there until its oil comes back, and then off it goes. But then it's with some seagulls, and they've had hooks in their mouths and they had to have surgery. I mean, there's little lizards, there's frogs, there's turtles, there's wombats, emus, kookaburras. There is so much. It's so big. I couldn't believe it.
I love this.
And it was like down this, and then
So
there's
cute.
like the reptile room, and then there's the big ones for ocean pools. And listen to this. They have to get water from the sea in a truck, I guess, and bring it there and put it in
Fill
these
it up.
big 3 watery tanks in case they've got like sea turtles or sea animals that need that. I don't know what else. Anyway, but then they can't release that water back they can't put it down the drain because it will make it too salty. So then they have to take it back
Into the ocean.
to the ocean. But then they have to have these watery ponds flowing the whole time with pumps and stuff to keep them aerated. It's such an incredibly mammoth operation. They've made a a book for vets, because vets aren't very well trained on native animals, because of course how do you deal, surgery on a frog and a bobtail and a pigeon. Sure. I mean, it's all over it's just wild, and they have barely any funding. But the interesting thing is, and of course, you know this as well, working in the creative industries, there's like the government will say, we've got this pot of money for the arts, and then it's like 1,000 organisations scrapping for $25 and all the grant applications. But of course, it's the same for this area, the kind of wildlife health, where there's all these organisations trying to survive, and they've got to do all the grant applications, and they're all trying to get this pot of money. So they really want advocacy to say that the government will just allocate, everyone gets 150 grand so they can pay for a vet or something like that, so that there's none of the scrapping around. So then you've got that baseline. The other thing, which again is same in arts and culture, is often the grants have to be used on infrastructure or materials. You can't use it on people. So you can't pay wages, for a producer, or in their case, a vet or a coordinator.
Which of course is the main...
That's where the cost is.
Of the operation.
Of course. So for me, that goes straight to like, grants become jobs for the boys, because it's like, well, you get a new path or some air conditioning, but you actually you're not training more vets or doing research. And of course, they're collecting samples from tissue. So we've got, you would have read about this awful thing that's happening to magpies at the moment. They're getting paralysis, and they need like hand cleaning and feeding, and 50% of them just die, but they can't find out what's going on. Normally they get a couple of hundred cases a year, I think. They've already had 900 cases in the last 2 months. And
just when you say I would have read about this, I haven't read about anything except for Kate Hulett. Okay. So I've got no idea what you're talking about.
Google Kate Hulett and magpies. We're coming together. But, of course, everything is connected because we live in a closed system. We need to be researching this stuff in order that we're ahead of the game rather than backwards.
And so often there's people doing like such invaluable work for peanuts or off their own
strategically underfunded.
Yeah. Yes.
Classic.
It's just so many examples of it. It's incredibly frustrating.
Anyway, it was fascinating, and at the end we were like running out of time, but I was like, I've got more questions, and the end culminating in me scritching a koala.
Scritching.
You're not allowed to hold it.
Yeah.
They didn't want to be held, but they were scritched. And then I sat down and a dingo was like in my hair.
I love that.
I can't wait to see it.
I can't wait to see a video of that.
Dingoes. And then there was a red-tailed cockatoo.
So cool.
Our friend got quite scared when he really wanted to go on the tallest tree in the room, if you know what I mean. And there was some screeching, not from the bird.
from our friend. One media advisor that we know.
No. It was. I got it on camera.
We'll watch that later.
But it was beautiful. What was it called? The bird? I want to say Roy, but it wasn't.
Raffy.
Raff. And it had been brought up in a home, in someone's house. But because it's such a squawker, and it mimicked car alarm, quite loud. They couldn't no longer have it in a domestic environment.
Got it. Raffy went
so it's
they
call them like permanent residents or something like that, some of the animals that just have to live there. The two dingoes had been brought up in somewhere and lived in a caravan, and you know they were not.
God, they're just taking them from all over.
Yeah.
I was just going to do a hard segue. Speaking of housing, Raffy growing up in a house, and
well,
here we are.
Looking at the beautiful Banksias across the road from us, where lots of our native animals.
You just completely ruined my segue.
Want to live. Well, okay. Tell us about the house and the Raffy.
Well, I was just going to move on to the next thing you did today, or we did. You came back to the office. We had a lovely meeting with Nic Brunsdon, the architect.
Yeah.
You can talk about who Nic is. I mean, what was we were wanting to talk to him basically about his understanding of how we're in such a mess with our kind of housing, planning, zoning, etc. across the board in WA.
The reason we're in this predicament we are at the moment is just it's just unfortunate. We've got these macroeconomic conditions where through COVID we had a lot of material cost price rises. that then kind of drove up these fixed price contracts to positions where, people locked in fixed price contracts and they're now more than what they were before. And then you've got the interest rate rises and you have these people that have gone in, are sort of mortgaged to the hilt anyway to trying to get access into the housing market. They've now had to refinance and borrow more with these builders who are also struggling because they can't get access to labour because we're losing a lot of labour to mining. It's actually it's a very uncompetitive, trying to get people in to do these trades and actually become builders and work on building sites to get these things finished.
Or they get trained up with the builders and as an apprentice and then they get poached by the mining company.
Exactly. So you have, these volume builders that are operating on razor-thin margins that have had to cop material cost rises, interest rate rises on the consumer side, and you just sort of have this really kind of, unfortunate set of circumstances where completing these projects becomes really, really difficult because the builders actually don't have the cash and can't, and the consumers who've bought it are now stuck because they're already at the edge of their borrowing capacity, and it's just this horrible impasse.
So when you say volume builder, it's the builder needs to build 100 kind of consecutively in order to make, so they need to buy enough windows for all of those buildings at once rather than bit by bit by bit.
Yeah, that's right. And so, when the material cost goes from, say, 2,000 a unit to 4,000 a unit across 100 projects at the same time, that just becomes, too much to bear. So there's got to be ways to try and help, we're all after the same goal here. We all want completed houses that people can live in, have access to, safe, secure housing. So, there has to be ways that we can try and unlock this. I know that in the past, the state government has been offering loans to builders, low interest or no interest loans to basically kind of come in and borrow and help kind of to complete these projects. I think that's something that's really admirable. But it's just it's a bad situation.
And there's also those ideas about we need to have a home and garden and that's the Australian dream. And what are your kind of views on that? And how is that perpetuated?
Yeah, well, that's the bigger one, right? Which is, not just what homes are we buying or we're trying to get access to, but what are the types? Where are we choosing to live and how are we choosing to live? And I think we as a state are really struggling to meet our density and infill targets. We're building a lot of the same type of house. We're building just 4x2s to the ends of the freeways. And we're kind of putting people in product that doesn't really serve their interests, and they're taking out high mortgages that they're highly leveraged on to kind of support these houses that aren't right-sized. We have sort of couples living in, with more bedrooms than they know what to do with. And so I think there's got to be some type of repositioning that tries to extol the benefits of, of living with high amenity and living, close to community and, kind of moving away from these car-dependent, suburbs where, the idea of a picket fence and a double car garage is sort of seen as the ideal.
Say, for example, as an example, where we're sitting here, this might have been a home and land package for $700,000 and it was all signed off before COVID, and then materials and building costs and whatever shot through the roof, and now the builder can't deliver this house for the $700,000, so it just sits here. The person who's committed to this package deal, thunder.
Like our inbox.
That's thunderous.
They're paying a mortgage.
They're paying a mortgage, but they can't. They've got no asset because now the builder can't
no
build
asset,
this.
nowhere to live. They're out paying rent.
They might be paying rent, exactly. So then what? There's this kind of high, I don't know, standoff. Because now how do you finish this? Because they can't. They've already got the highest possible mortgage they could ever get. Yeah, so it's
a big mess. And you've been speaking to someone as well who has a story and who's been a bit of a spokesperson for this problem, as someone who's been waiting for a house to be completed, who I think now does have their home completed, and it's not they're not in Fremantle, but obviously it's happening to a lot of people in the Fremantle electorate as well. And what's her sort of take and her experience been like?
So, I mean, effectively, it's one of those circumstances where it wasn't going to happen unless the people who have been affected came together to deal with it. You know, I mean, I feel like that is similar to the community independence, and exactly what one of the vets who I spoke to today said, the government's not going to do it, so we'll do it ourselves. And he says we're a stronger voice together. And the guy at the wilderness, the wildlife centre.
Pause.
And go. The guy.
It's only the best line of the whole podcast, and just being drowned out by an aeroplane and a car.
Okay, let me go back. Yeah, so Dean Huxley, the guy who's heading up the WA Wildlife Centre, said exactly that. He said, and I wrote it down because I was like, wow, nailed that. The government is not going to do it. We will do it ourselves. And we are stronger as a voice together. And he and the other wildlife centres across the state got together to go and lobby the government, which is just the same as what the community independence idea is, that individuals in the community say, if the government's not going to sort this out, we're going to have to figure it out ourselves. And that's exactly what, this kind of class action against the builders is about as well. And it's pretty frustrating because, you know, although it's not like this is the solution, and Nic said it's the wrong carrot and there's no stick. And the thing that we come back to with all these big crises and issues is it is the government's job to deal with the difficult things. So we need people looking at this, experts, and saying, what is
going wrong?
The solve? You know, what do we do here in this instance? What do we do to stop this happening again? What safeguards can we put in to make the outcomes better next time? And just to make our city and our country better. And that doesn't seem to be happening. It's like, well, here we are.
Totally. Even if you look at the recent, housing policy announcements, it's like, not only have you not solved the last crisis that you've caused, but you're making the exact same mistakes again. Just more incentives to buy more houses with no like systemic solution to how they're not getting built or where they're getting built, or the best way to build them and the best types of dwellings that we actually need, etc., etc. Like, it's just so frustrating to watch. And at the end of the day, and I think the end of that conversation with Nic, what we kind of all landed on was,
it's fucked.
Well, it is. It's a big mess. But also, the people who walk away scot-free with the profits are the developers, and the people who suffer are the construction, the family-run builders, often locally owned building companies, and the people who are holding the mortgages with nowhere to live.
Yep. Classic.
And it's a classic who benefits.
Follow the money and, follow the Peter Dutton having dinner with the head of the biggest, developer in the state, stuff like that. And you think, oh, that's interesting. I wonder if that's why this is not being fixed. It's...
And why the solution isn't being, or, the problem isn't being approached from the standpoint of what's going to be the best outcome for people and for our communities, but rather what's going to be the cheapest, easiest, quickest way for the developers to make as much money as they can, which there's just sort of no other way of cutting it.
Yeah.
When you look at the outcomes.
Yeah. This is a crisis not being treated like one. It's just, you're right. The two major parties have come up with policies which are a little bit just like put a little bit of kindling on that fire and see if that makes the fire bigger or puts the fire out.
Or more to the point, see if it gets us elected. And then maybe change tack
Is
altogether.
this a sweet enough...
Hello. Wow.
Speaking of
gorgeous
wildlife.
Dog.
Is this a sweet enough sugar hit for people to want to vote for us? But there's so many fundamental issues which are not being dealt with.
So much more we could talk about there. It's barely even scratching the surface. And I also feel like a lot of the time, when you talk about housing issues, people are like, well, what are you going to do about it, Kate? Like, what's your... And it's like, no one person or one political party, it would seem, has all the answers. But I think what's great is just like pulling the wool back a little bit and asking the questions. And like, that's for me, so the value of this campaign has been just asking the questions and trying at least to decode what is going on and what the mess is, and trying to explain it in a way that people can understand. But
I mean, this one's a real complex one because it's so layered, and it's kind of state, and there's so many.
All the layers working
Some
together.
of the land which is being sold to developers is private land, so it was just old market farms or whatever, and then they can sell it to So it is.
We might have to do a part 2 for this one, but
pretty interesting.
before we close out, what else is there to say?
Ice cream.
We've got an ice cream truck, just to straight from
What a
housing
pivot.
crisis to ice cream truck.
Anyway,
Soft
talking
serve.
of sweetening you up for a vote or two. Talking of sugar
It's
hits.
school holidays. We've got an ice cream truck going around with beautiful volunteers and probably you out and about to talk to people if they've got questions and want to keep their kids busy for a minute while they chat. We don't know where it's going to be tomorrow, really. We didn't really decide that. We were meant to decide that earlier, but anyway, we'll let you know on
Send us a
socials.
message if you think that's a good place for kids and ice cream and chats.
Yeah.
And we'll send our van over.
And the other thing that we wanted to shout out was we are very much still looking to sign people up to help us out on Election Day, next Saturday, the 3rd of May.
We need hundreds of people to give us a bit of time, a couple of hours, handing
smiling
out
face.
how to vote. We'll give you a
actually really
T-shirt. All you have to do is, smile, be your cool, charming, normal self, and we'll probably give you a couple bits of shortbread.
Definitely some shortbread. And you get to come to our really, really fun election night party and watch the results roll in.
Okay.
Everyone said it was the best party of the year.
I know, I'm just saying
I'd
that we now are dealing with hundreds of people in the venue. Won't take that many people, but
Okay, some of you will get to come to this.
oh my God, Emma, cut all that out. If you're cute.
First in, best dressed, my friend.
But yeah, if you can, it'd be gorgeous and we would really appreciate it. It's really important. And the crow is telling us it's time to go.
It's time to go.
You can do that via the website.
Like and subscribe wherever you're listening.
Share it with a friend.
We'll speak to you tomorrow.
Yes, thank you.
Thanks. Bye.